telcos should be both excited and cautious about the future of 5G networks. The technology has unprecedented game-changing potential for mobile network operators and communication service providers. But it will require new business models and an agile, automated infrastructure to monetize it effectively. Up next is a panel discussion on 5G network strategies, collaboration, and future-ready architecture. I would like to invite Neil Shah, Vice President and Partner, Counterpoint Technology Market Research, to moderate the discussion. Over to you, Mr. Shah.
Hello, everyone. This is Neil Shah, VP and Research and a partner at Counterpoint Research. And I am here today to discuss a very interesting topic and a very hot topic on 5G network strategies, which has been the talk of the town. And just coming from the MWC Barcelona, that is what everyone was talking about as we are entering from 4G era to 5G era in most of the countries, except for the few developed ones which are already on course, but still expanding as well. So here we have a great panel with us today. So let me introduce quickly. We have Mr. Randeep Sekon, CTO, Bharti Airtel, Jagbir Singh, CTO, Vodafone Idea, Mr. Hannes Ekstrom, VP and Head of Strategy, Business Area Networks, Ericsson, Mr. Samir Vayuru, Director, Head of Worldwide Telecommunication Business Development at AWS. We have Mr. Tarun Chabra, Head of Mobile Network Business India at Nokia. So with all these panels members, we will actually directly jump into the discussion on what are the different network strategies operators as well as infrastructure vendors and other system partners are adopting to drive this 5G revolution, and how we can build a strong future-ready architecture which can be scalable into the 5G and beyond technologies and bring the promise which 5G has been talking about in transforming the entire landscape beyond personal transformation, which is like business and enterprise and society. So let's start with the first question. We'll start discussing on spectrum and RAN in our first leg of discussions. So with respect to that, let me ask the first question. So as you know, like spectrum and RAN is the most important part to build out the network. And it is also contributing significantly to the capex of the network, right? So it needs to be deployed, utilized really wisely from operators' perspective to actually really reap the benefits of the 5G architecture. So what are the different strategies operators are adopting, as well as infrastructure vendors are also helping with to deploy this 5G network? So maybe I can go to Mr. Jagbir Singh first, and sir, if you can provide some of the strategies to build this holistic architecture.
Okay, so thank you, Neil. And I think from my side, I would say that we had discussion in multiple forums. In terms of the architecture, we know that 5G is going to be mostly based on the massive MIMO, which will be using the technology like the beamforming. And initially, the architecture we talk about in the mid-band and the low band, it is going to be, 32, 30R or 32R or 6040 or 64R. That is going to be the macro architecture. And you may call it classical, you may call it the different architecture, but I'll come to the open RAN and the virtual RAN, etc. But I think it is going to be, until now, whatever the deployment we are seeing is more of the oriented towards the classical. And if we get the mid band, which is 3.5 around, and low band, if anybody want to reuse the spectrum or refarming the spectrum of the current 4G or 3G or 2G, whatever we have, I think it's going to be macro architecture based on massive MIMO. And maybe 80 to 90% deployment has to be around the macro. And this will help in terms of the coverage, because you are using the beamforming, even if you take 32T32R, I think should translate maybe approximately the coverage of 2.3 gigahertz in 3.5. Because you have the better technology, you have the better, like more TRXs, we call it, or the receivers to get the diversity and to actually get the diversity gain. So I think this is going to help in terms of utilizing the current infrastructure which is available in terms of the tower, fiber, microwave, etc. And more importantly, not creating too many additional sites. Of course, there will be new sites coming in 5G because the band is higher band. But I think to begin with, mostly we should be in position to utilize the current infrastructure, and it should be like around mid-band. In addition to this, I think if you ask me, like small cell, indoor and outdoor, both are going to be there.
Yeah.
Because to complement and to ensure the good coverage indoor and outdoor, especially after work from home, I think this culture is going to continue, and for sure the 5G is also going to promise directly or indirectly to replacement of fixed line. If not replacement, at least complementing fixed line inside the home, because you have enough bandwidth available as long as we can reach inside. But reaching inside cost effectively. That's the reason the macro is very important. Small cell will continue. Maybe I would say 15 to 20% deployment to begin with. The traffic build up at the, like we know the accurate locations or the experience of the customer, we can keep deploying more and more depending on the business case. Coming back to, I think, my view on, let's say, the virtual RAN versus the, open RAN, I'm sure that deployment also will happen because it's supposed to be, I'm using the word supposed to be, it's lowest capex or the lower capex and opex. And if that is true, then for sure it will get deployed very fast. But it depends on how the vendor ecosystem is coming and getting developed, because all big vendors are still, I see the resistance actually in supporting the virtual RAN and the open RAN. Another important thing will be actually we have to ensure the complementing of 5G network and 4G network to each other. So you can't have deploy. Yes, we will deploy SA architecture, but finally it has to complement the 4G. 4G is going to stay for long, and any new technology deployment actually takes time before you can get seamless coverage. Even if you have all the money available, if you have all the infrastructure available, I think it takes time to make it a uniform coverage everywhere. So I think complementing 4G and 5G each other is very important aspect of deployment of the 5G network. And for sure, the 5G benefit, the killer benefit is low latency. So 5G has to be there. If that needs NSA versus SA, actually SA will give you the better, latency benefits and the network slicing features. But we have to see, like maybe begin with NSA and go for the SA depending on the areas and the clusters. So I think that's my view, that as long as the spectrum is available in mid-band and low-band, 5G will have the, good deployment, subject to, again, the spectrum prices are affordable price.
Got it. Mr. Randeep, talking about spectrum, we just had a conversation that for indoors, we might require a little bit lower band as well, along with the mid-band sweet spot, which Mr. Jagbir is talking about. So what are your thoughts on the overall spectrum spread, as well as Mr. Jagbir Singh was talking about specification of the network? Would it be more urban thing? What will happen in rural areas where you guys have really strong network as well?
Thank you, Neil, for the question. My belief is that, first of all, the right amount of spectrum is needed at affordable prices, like Jagbir said, because if you have lower spectrum, then we'll not be able to give the promise of speed, assuming, but if each operator doesn't get enough spectrum. But what we are hearing right now, there is also the spectrum has to be interference free, because if the spectrum is with interference, you can't use it. We are seeing it in some cases in 4G as well. So interference free large tranche of affordable spectrum is the first ingredient to a good 5G experience for in India. Second, 5G will follow traffic because India already has users who use wireless mobile as their only means to connect to internet. They don't have access to fiber to home. In that case, there are heavy users who will use it, and they are not limited to urban areas. Actually, they are spread all over India. In my view, the rollout of 5G will be same. It will follow the traffic and it will go to users who are having high usage and who are ready to invest in a 5G phone, because we all know that the current phone will not work. So it will go to areas where people are having affordability to invest in a 5G phone to use the 5G network. Then comes the SA and NSA debate. In my view, what Jagbir said is very relevant, that 4G is going to be stayed. So 4G and NSA layer will be the best way to use the existing 4G coverage, which India has extensive, and overlay with the 5G, let's say a sub-6 coverage. That will give you a good first start. I would say that will be the first year of 5G when the 5G rollout starts. Before, it will be still 3 years, maybe before 5G becomes 4G is equal to 5G kind of a coverage perspective. So it will take some time. Also practicality, also investment, also the return, because today if you see the number of 5G devices in Indian market in all the three operators are limited. So unless the device number increases, even if you build a coverage, you will not see traffic, and hence you will bring cost in terms of capex and opex, but you will not see revenue. Hence they have to go in the same method. Coming on solutions using Messe MIMO, traditional classic 88R kind of solutions which are being said, I feel today with the great advancements, you mentioned Mobile World Congress, I'm sure you would have gone and seen that, that all the vendors have come out with very advanced solutions which are related to, for example, Messe MIMO, which are light in weight, which are actually lower weight than a classic MIMO radio. Hence, it takes lower rate. They have advanced power features. They consume less power. So they are also environment friendly. That's another part, because 5G will have densification. So the power consumption has to be low. We have to kind of make sure that advanced features are running, which are controlling the power being consumed as and when traffic builds up. And these will then give you a chance to roll out using advanced technologies pan India. I think in one way it is good India is late in 5G rollout, because the first wave of radios which vendors brought were the first off the shelf. The more advanced ones are coming later part of the year or early next year. So by the time we start rolling up in large numbers, we'll be using the Gen 2 products, and this will be very good because they'll be efficient in every manner. And this is good for India because India can't afford to refresh their network so often because of the affordability crunch here. So I would say Messe MIMO based solutions, maybe a few cases you will use classic MIMOs, and then NSA architecture sub-6 is what the first rollout will happen. You may have some private networks, especially those multinationals who are seeing their counterparts in different other parts of the world using private networks. So there could be some private network play where we will probably build SA kind of networks and a dedicated on-prem network, and those will be used for a more, you can say, SME or a enterprise-only use case. So I feel this all will then help many more Indians to connect to 5G, which the speeds will be much faster than the current 4G. I don't think they will easily compete with the FTTH speed because of indoor penetration. As we know, sub-6 will have a lower indoor penetration. But going forward, at least to the areas where there's no fiber, at least 5G will give a very great experience. Later, when we set up millimeter wave based networks, that can give you much higher speeds, and that can enable. I would say that's how the evolution would be. On Cloud RAN and ORAN, I think Cloud RAN would be a way of rolling out RAN networks by all the standard vendors also. They are building products basis this. Cloud is got all those use cases which we are seeing in core. So RAN will not be spared from that, and they will also benefit. ORAN architecture, Airtel is committed to ORAN. We are having ORAN solutions in our lab. We have even put a trial network based on ORAN in Punjab. So in one way, we are testing ORAN extensively, and I agree it has a promise of lower TCO. Not just lower TCO, it has also got a promise of an ecosystem contributing to the growth. So you may not be limited to one vendor giving all the features. You can use platforms like RIC to bring in features which will give you advanced possibilities, which may not be possible if you are in a closed system. So I would say O-RAN has a promise. Telcos will have to kind of bear with it to become mature to the level. But what we are seeing early in our lab and our field trials, it is not very far off. It is able to give comparative performance. And so I feel O-RAN would also be a way in which networks will get built. Maybe at one stage, Ericsson, Nokia, Samsung, they will also start building O-RAN compatible networks. Samsung is already building. There are certain markets where they're doing. I'm sure it will be soon with Ericsson and Nokia also. So that's what my view of the RAN and spectrum is.
That's great summary. Thanks, Randeep. So I'll move on to Mr. Hannes. So at a recent Ericsson Analyst Day a few weeks ago, you guys focused a lot on power efficiency, which Randeep also pointed out, right? So building a very power efficient green RAN solution. So if you can talk about that, at the same time, also you can talk about the spectrum is very important in India and it's expensive as well. And we have to coexist 4G, 5G as Randeep and Mr. Randeep and Jagbir said. So can you talk about ESS as well a little bit and how it can help the emerging market operators like India?
Sure. Thanks, Neil. So let me start talking then a bit about sustainability and sort of what we are doing there on bringing down the energy consumption. We see as a company, first of all, that the majority of our emissions are actually caused by the products that we build and how they are being used in field. So that accounts for us for about 90% of our total emissions, right? So if we want to talk about, I wouldn't call it low-hanging fruit, but where we need to focus on initially now, it's really to make our products more energy efficient so that Indian networks, American networks, all networks across the world simply use less energy in providing these fantastic 5G services. So there, our strategy has been and continues to be to invest into custom-made silicon. So we do a lot of in-house silicon development and drive the integration of these units further and further, and that we see is bringing down the size, weight, and energy consumption of these units. So we talked a lot about the massive MIMO, and Randeep mentioned as well that they are coming down in size. I mean, we are now offering a 12 kilogram massive MIMO 32T version to the market, and of course there's a high level of integration to make that possible. So that we see continue, and I agree with Jagbir and Randeep here. I mean, I think the massive MIMO is a great opportunity, and that mid-band spectrum is a must to drive. That is what will transform the experience of the consumer towards 5G and differentiate towards the 4G services. However, I would like to say that the most power out of that mid-band spectrum we actually get when we introduce also a low-band component of the network. And that's where sort of the existing FDD bands that are currently primarily used for 4G come into play. Because what we see is that with software, we are able, through carrier aggregation, to extend the coverage of the mid-band spectrum by about 60%. If we have a low band component in there as well. And we talked a lot about sort of fixed wireless access use cases and in-building penetration. This is roughly, this is roughly 6 dB in radio terms, or 60% of coverage extension that we are able to sustain. And that's why where sort of Ericsson has been pioneering this spectrum sharing, or our implementation of that Ericsson spectrum sharing, which allows you essentially to share a spectrum band between 4G and 5G dynamically. So every 1 millisecond, we are basically adapting the usage of that spectrum according to the load of the network on the 4G and 5G respectively. And that's a great introduction as we grow the terminal penetration of 5G terminals in India as well, right? Obviously, as you move along, you will migrate more and more of the total spectrum, also low band, to 5G. But as an initial launch, it's a fantastic tool to cater for the demand of the users. So I agree. Massive MIMO, they're coming down in weight. It's great from a sustainability perspective. And we are addressing there the energy usage. We need to complement that mid-band and massive MIMO build with a low band to get the most out of this, right? Then just one comment also. I mean, we talked about fiber to the home and potential replacements. We all know about in-building penetration challenges, right? We do a lot of work as well with CPE, customer premise equipment manufacturers, also to have potentially have units with external antennas as well, right, to alleviate this. And I think that's a very interesting proposition in a country like India, where potentially many people are relying on mobile and the mobile network for their indoor and in-house connectivity of the family. So that's an interesting area to explore, because you take away some of that challenge of indoor penetration, of course, with a downside of an added cost of the device, right? But it's an area that is gaining ground in other parts of the world.
Great points. Thanks very much. So maybe moving on to Mr. Tarun. You guys signed a deal for single RAN with Airtel and have been deploying those throughout the last couple of years. So can you talk about the benefits of single RAN Nokia brings, and also how you're working on making the networks more intelligent?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. So I think starting with the first challenge that everybody is now waiting for 5G, and idea is how to launch 5G faster and have investment production. So I think single RAN over a period of time, the way it was built, that you were able to support multiple technologies, and as mentioned by Hans also, that you cannot have a rollout of only massive MIMO. You have to have a support coming from lower band so that you can have coverage and capacity. And maybe it is going to be more of capacity coming from the massive MIMO sites, and then maybe coverage coming from the lower bands. So I think that deployment in India definitely is going to help our customers, both the customers, with reference to single RAN, which we have done over a period of time, and the synergies which are there with reference to interworking, right? So that is on single RAN. But I think one angle which is very, very important is that the deployment which we have done over a period of time, if that is actually 5G ready, if we suppose try to take the existing radios and we say that how much of that installed base in India for the existing frequencies is 5G ready. For our case, it is around 85 to 90% is already 5G ready. So I think that helps at least on those frequencies. And then, of course, we talk about spectrum auction and 3.5, right, which is going to be very, very crucial. And I think mentioned by Jagbir and Randeep both, that we need to have right kind of spectrum at right kind of prices. We know about the India market and the ARPUs. So if we have to talk about the TCO for the overall launch of 5G, then I think these aspects are very important. And also, one more aspect is that when we talk about 5G, we should not forget about the transport and the fiber, which is so equally important when you roll out your services. So when you go from a classical solution in the beginning, as I think Randeep was alluding, that it might be first 1.5 years, then you just start in the beginning with a classical solution, get the support from lower band. And then later on, you move for technologies where you can actually have your network topology also in architecture. You have to change that as per the latest C-RANs and O-RANs of the world. Nokia is leading in 2 forums, work groups of O-RAN already, which is with reference to front haul and RIC. And I think we are committed, and Randeep was mentioning about this, that yes, we are part of these work groups. We have done a lot of contribution towards this. And as and when there's going to be more maturity in this ecosystem, we are going to be part of the game for sure, right? So that it can increase that flexibility which is there with reference to O-RAN. But once we talk about, let's say, some other advanced technologies with reference to 5G, when you go from classical to vRAN, ORAN, I think one factor is that how your vRAN environment is going to be overall with reference to far edge clouds. Because once you have the CUDU architecture, you can have this latency less than 100 microsecond only if you are going into far edge cloud investment as well. At this point of time, the clouds were mainly from a core angle. Even web scales are having very less number of clouds as compared to what might be required. So when we move from a classical RAN 5G launch, maybe a better TCO in the beginning and faster market to launch, then we move into ORAN and vRAN environment over a period of next 2 or 3 years with new applications which are going to be really very less latency requirement. And that will increase then the flexibility of launching more services, especially with reference to private wireless network, which is still a bit of an untouched field, if I say, in India also. And this is having a huge promise. So maybe it is going to be these steps, and I think we are going to work closely with our customers that how they want to really get into these business applications and how they want to have these 3 steps, starting from classical, then to open vRAN environment, and how they're going to make their network architecture changes so that they can actually address new applications and services.
Hey, Samir. Continuing the question, what do you think is the next step for RAN improvements in terms of moving to 5G? We hear everything is more about cloudification beyond the radio part. And where do you see the industry going, especially from markets like India? Where do you see, like, is it going to be a virtual RAN or open RAN? How AWS plays into that? If you can help, how you're looking to help operators with 5G RAN?
Yeah, thank you, Neil. A very pertinent question. Let me first of all start by telling you about the role that AWS plays, right? About 15, 17 years ago, we started virtualizing data centers, right? When we looked at enterprise applications that ran in a data center, they were constrained by capacity, the inability to innovate, high cost points, and so on. And the same dynamic today applies to various components of a network. And the RAN is one of them for sure, right? And you could argue that in a wireless network, it is one of the largest cost components. And historically, when a network was built, the capacity calculations were always based on peak usage. So let's take Mother's Day, for example. Everyone's calling their mother, and that is really the peak. And so you had to invest in the infrastructure to be able to serve that peak that on the other 364, 365 days of the year was not being utilized at maximum capability. So our role is to bring that elasticity to the network, to the RAN, to the core also in a wireless network, and to basically simplify that capacity planning, because the beauty of deploying these network components on a cloud is scalability and elasticity. So you can scale on demand, scale up on demand, scale down on demand, and only pay for the amount of usage of the network infrastructure that you actually use, as opposed to paying for peak all of the time. The second aspect of it is really about the ability to innovate, right? So you can basically serve your customers with a specific RAN implementation at time 0 and switch to a different RAN implementation or configuration at time 1, all with the click of a button. So the ability to innovate, to bring new services to market is much, much quicker. And so that's our role to enable that. We really don't have a point of view on vRAN versus ORAN or any other implementation. Our position is that we will work with every RAN vendor out there and make sure that AWS is the best place to run their network workload with the lowest total cost of operation, the lowest power, and the highest elasticity, the most geographical reach, and the most functionality. I'll give you a perfect example. What we've announced with Dish Networks, where we are building a 5G network in a cloud-native environment, is that we have innovated with our customer to create a particular RAN-friendly infrastructure on something we call Graviton 2, which is our in-house chip, which provides a 40% total cost of operations improvement, as well as a 40 to 50% power reduction, right? So again, our job is to make sure AWS is the best place to run those network workloads.
Got it. Got it. No, very good. I think audience has clear picture on how AWS is playing a big role now with this next generation network. And as you said, the network is becoming more cloud native, and who better than Amazon AWS partner with, right? So
what I was saying to summarize for the first part of the discussion, mid-band is going to be very important. 30 to 30 R MIMO, massive MIMO is going to be the key technology. Spectrum efficiency, power efficiency is going to be key. We need obviously cheaper spectrum, so the TCO could be lower. And at the same time, we will evolve from classical to more virtualized or cloud RAN as we go. So that and that is what Tarun alluded to, and that would be a great segue topic to our next discussion, which is cloudification of RAN. So maybe Randeep, I can ask you about, like, as we move from classical to more cloudification, how do you see the journey for India? Is it going to be like 2 years, 3 years after you build a basic cloud, basic RAN or base station, and then virtualize everything, or it happens parallelly?
The cloud RAN, in my view, is like what was also said earlier, is the way it will get involved. The RAN solutions will get involved, and they have to get evolved by the standard vendors. ORAN by design comes only on cloud, because that is how the whole disaggregated architecture works. So ORAN day zero will come on cloud, but now ORAN is open, but cloud RAN in 5G will also have to come. I'll tell you the reason. Two reasons basically. One is cloud allows you a basic flexibility, which is not there if you are on a custom-made chip. Now, custom-made chip gives you a lot of, the scale and the densification, which is not possible with the COTS hardware. Hence, this is the challenge which ORAN is actually grappling with: how to get a more denser, more powerful DUs on site. I think with the newer announcements by all the chip vendors, by 2023, we should have solutions which will be capable and compatible with the custom-made chips. So I think that will allow flexibility of cloud RAN to be built even by standard vendors.
Great.
But when we go into the applications, which you can say the 5G enables, for example, cloud gaming, for example, AR, VR entertainment, if we talk about B2C applications, which will mean you will need to deploy a MEC or a edge solution at your edge part of the networks, which means on the go, you will have to have the RAN and that edge interwork with each other to provide, let's say, a slice to a customer, or to provide a higher QoS, or to enable a provisioning on the fly for, let's say, 1 hour of extra bandwidth, something like that. So when two clouds will have to work, you'll have to need a cloud on the RAN side as well. So once those applications become mature, I would say cloud RAN will come in. But right now, I think the reliability is more key than cloudification, if you ask me. That's why when the cloud came in core, it still started a little slow, and the classic hardware kept coming in RAN also. But subsequently, the blade servers became, you can say, data center ready, and they were the right cooling requirements and things like that. Once that hardware became robust enough, now I think nobody builds a classic solution for core. Everybody's building cloud-based core. I would say this is the time it will happen. We shouldn't rush into it, because it will then probably create some resiliency issues and some stability issues, but it will come. O-RAN, we can see how it plays out right now. That's my view on cloudification of RAN.
Great. I think O-RAN will be still a little bit small percentage of the overall network. So I believe there will be a lot of trials going on, and we'll come to see on the interoperability between the classical and O-RAN as well, and the proprietary and O-RAN as well. So that will be another tough nut to crack, but I think we'll see how it goes. Mr. Jagbir Singh, do you have any thoughts on the same, on what you guys are thinking from MEC, edgification, as well as cloudification of RAN?
So I think what Randeep said is, like I agree with that. And the only thing I would like to say, let's see 2-3 parts of the O-RAN plus the cloudification. So we are talking about the cloud basically before the O-RAN. There's no doubt that the cloudification for the core network is already being done, and all operators are actually deploying cloud-based. So earlier it was more of the virtualized hardware, virtual cloud, VM-based. Now we are slowly moving towards the native cloud. So native cloud is also getting slowly. When you deploy 5G, it's going to be 100% native cloud, which will give you the inherent advantage of doing the network slicing. Once you have the container base, you can give the different application. It becomes easier to give the different flavor. So the cloud native is very important for the 5G. What is the inherent advantage of 5G? Why everybody is talking actually? Enhanced broadband is, I don't think, is a killer app. It's low latency is the biggest, as I said earlier, is the biggest benefit of the 5G. So as Randeep was giving the example of the cloud gaming, AR, VR, or any application maybe automated driving or a driverless car, or I don't know what kind of those applications are going to be in future. Those applications can only be delivered if you have the low latency. Now, to get the low latency, you need to actually ensure that you are close to the application or close to the user. So for that, having the MEC is important, but at the same time, having the O-RAN working using the MEC, I think still is a challenge. We are all saying that. And to actually get end-to-end benefit of the network slicing, so you have the core network, you have the transport network, and then you have the RAN. Actually, unless we have this integrated RAN coming into, end-to-end network slicing is not going to work. So you can have the network slicing for the core network or the transport network, but end-to-end, if you want to have, actually, then you need to have the integrated RAN, where actually you can have the RAN in the cloud. But unfortunately, every technology takes time to get matured, and there's a maturity time for the O-RAN. So yes, it is required, but as long as we have the mobile edge compute available, which is a compute storage, etc., available at the edge for the core and transport, I think same can be used for the RAN tomorrow. Creating infrastructure, I don't see a big worry for the operators. I think worry is to ensure the reliability of the solution which works, and that reliability will come only when it's get matured. So I think it is maybe some time before we can look at end-to-end network slicing or the O-RAN going into the cloud. There's no hurry. Ensure it delivers the stability first, and then we talk about the end-to-end network slicing or the O-RAN in a cloud.
Right. Tarun, to my previous question, can you talk about how Nokia is helping operators deploy, obviously, the virtual cloud RAN? Is it on the DU side? And also, with respect to intelligence, making the network more intelligent, is this part of cloudification as well?
Yeah, so I think, as mentioned by Jagbir and Andeep, the main benefit of edge computing is this ability to move computing from devices to cloud. Because once you make this a movement from device to cloud, then you are making it actually less expensive, right? But the problem which might come in this case is that when you start moving, let's say, for this kind of network, and you start moving computing to 4Edge clouds, then, as I mentioned in my previous comment also, then you need to have network architecture as per that. For example, let's say if you're having a multiple DUs taking care of BTSs, you have to be in the range of 10 to 20 kilometers, and the front haul speed might be in the range of 50 Gbps or so, right? So in that case, we have to see that whether we are going to have a centralized DU environment and we have that kind of frontal speed. And then backhaul, of course, can be then managed between DU and CU. But the point is that if we go for this kind of network architecture, then it will require a lot of work together being done by us and the customers, that how their network architecture will evolve over a period of time. So even though the benefits, and when you do for end-to-end slicing, so maybe you have to take this in 3 steps. The first step is you go for 4 or 5 applications which are either already being done by some of the developed markets. Right? We can start with the classical RAN, and we see that, okay, FWA is one thing, because in India, there are almost like 25 million fixed broadband subscribers and 750 million wireless broadband subscribers today on 4G. So which means if you think of going from, let's say, a classical 5G, and then you go for a next step of slicing, you can actually give you can give the broadband using FWA and slicing to many more subscribers, as it is almost that difficult to reach from 25 to hundreds for fixed broadband in India. So I think that seems to be one thing where we have to work together with the customers, with our CSPs, that how FWA, other than eMBB, can be your first step. And then when you start moving from that to AR linked use cases or very low latency use cases, then I think over a period of time, this cloud RAN network has to evolve. Now, it can be combination. India is a very big country. We have many, many markets. It's not going to be one today and next tomorrow. It's going to be a combination of VRANs, ORANs, classics over a period of next 3 years. And then there are some areas which I again mentioned. For example, private wireless networks are still so-called greenfield for us, as a telecom service provider as well as vendor. So maybe we can work together with the telcos and CSPs and cover them with the help of CSPs, at least some private wireless networks where we can use Cloud RAN as an example, and we can showcase that success before it becomes a massification of that. For example, ports. For example, manufacturing sector. With Atmanirbhar, there's going to be a lot of semiconductor stuff now shifting. Manufacturing is going to go up. So maybe we have to work with Bharti's, Jio's, and Vodafone's to start making them as our combined customer and showcase the success of initial Cloud RAN before it becomes into more areas and it becomes a commercial network for end consumers as well. So I think it is steps, application by application. Start with classic, go to slicing, go FWA, go eMBB, then go into more advanced AR thing, and then maybe using private wireless network. Then I think it is going to be in next 3 or 4 years, we can actually cover into these use cases as well as we can take the benefit of technology. Low latency, I already mentioned. I think that is going to be the key for the advanced applications and use cases.
Exactly. Great points, Arun. Good flow and good direction for how an emerging market like India should proceed. So maybe moving on to Hannes. You guys also talked a lot about virtual and cloud RAN with new products launched last year. I think around mid-band, if I'm not wrong. Can you talk about that and how it is helping with automation? There's a lot of focus on intelligent automation as well.
So when we think, and I also, like many of you, just came back from MWC, right? And there's a lot of discussions on openness there. And when we think about openness, we think about 3 aspects, right? One is the automation, which is driving efficiencies to automate networks utilizing AI technologies. And here we are fully in line with the initiatives driven in O-RAN Alliance around the RIC, right? So we have launched the Intelligent Network Platform, which is an open platform, SMO architecture, also doing multi-vendor networks and also third-party developed RAPs as well. I think that's a key point, right? That I think this will be a platform play, right? Where third parties should be encouraged to innovate on top of our networks, and that we are, or Ericsson is opening up for in that context of the SMO and the Intelligent Network Platform. The second one, the second aspect of openness then is around open interfaces. And here, Ericsson is a leading contributor to O-RAN Alliance. if we look specifically at what many people think about, which is the lower layer split, we think there are three components that need to be addressed in order for that to become a scalable and viable path forward. So that is in the performance area, it's in the security area, and it's in the sustainability area, or the energy performance as well. And here we are committed to driving these improvements in the context of O-RAN Alliance. And we created, or we proposed, a work item to address specifically the performance piece of it a couple of weeks back, right? So I believe this is a matter of maturity, and we will get there as an industry. And of course, by the time we get there and can build viable, high-performing, secure, and sustainable products, then Ericsson will be there for sure. And then, Neil, yes, you're right. So we have launched, and the third aspect then coming into that is on cloudification. And this is the one we believe is the most transformative part of openness. And here we have launched then a mid-band product and also low band product for Cloud RAN. And I say transformative because I think this is where we will be working as an industry with new players, new business models, and new capabilities in the space of automation, among others. So this will change larger parts of the industry that we are working in, rather than the two other aspects. Then I think, like Jagbir is noting as well, right? This will take time to deploy at scale Cloud RAN. We believe in the technology. We're investing into technology, but the majority of networks will be purpose-built for the foreseeable future. That's why we are also investing into a link between the two systems, right? So at whatever pace our customers go, we will be able to interwork between a purpose-built system and a Cloud RAN system and provide the features like carrier aggregation, like Ericsson spectrum sharing, because the two will coexist for a long time. That's at least our firm belief. So there will not be one global migration path. It will rather be very different in very different geographies, and we need to give that flexibility to our customers then.
Hey, Samir, so can you talk about from the cloud native to edge as well, how you guys are helping operators?
Oh, I'd love to. This has been a massive area of investment for us with our telco partners. And wavelength is one component, but let me talk about, first of all, what the edge is, right?
Yeah.
The edge is the cloud wherever you are today, you being an application, a machine, or a person, right? So we always refer to our edge continuum, which is the edge is not one point in space or one location. It is the ability to bring the power of the cloud down to the microprocessor at one end and to the metro level on the other side. And between these two extremes, there are solutions for the on-premise capabilities. There are solutions that reside within a network, and there are solutions that reside in other data centers. And there are solutions that reside on a device itself. Right. So let's talk a little bit about what we're doing in this space. Right. So a couple of years ago, we announced something called AWS Outpost. Outpost was us bringing the power of the AWS cloud for on-premise applications where there is a need to process the data locally to reduce the transport costs and to meet regulatory requirements. So you can basically take a rack or now a 1U or a 2U server, install it within your existing premises, but interact with it just the way you'd interact with the AWS cloud. Then we also invested with our telco operators in Wavelength, which is the AWS cloud that is co-resident and co-located with a 5G network, so that you can create a combination of network-driven use cases with AWS Edge within the network itself. And we've announced these collaborations with Verizon in the United States, Bell Canada, with KDDI in Japan, with SK Telecom in South Korea, and Vodafone in a few properties in Europe. And what we're starting to see is that the power of the connectivity provided by our telco partners, especially in the 5G domain and in the SD-WAN domain, when you combine that with the rest of the capabilities and the hundreds of thousands of partners and applications that run on AWS, is leading to some amazing new use cases. I'll give you an example. We've been working with a renewable energy supplier called Eneris, where they basically need to process when to supply energy to the grid from your home or from a factory. And so you need to act on this within milliseconds so that you don't lose energy in that transfer process. And so by having Wavelength and having that processing at the edge, we're able to reduce energy wastage from seconds every time, like thousands of times a day, times seconds that we save, times the energy usage, is an example of how we're innovating together.
Got it. Great. Very good. I think that also helps a lot of clarity on like how AWS solutions are going from like core to deep edge as well. And when you talk about IoT, AWS Greengrass, it's extending right to the endpoints, right? So covering everything across. The definition of edge changes depending on who you talk to, right? So yeah, great to see Amazon, AWS actually having multiple solutions to address these needs for operators.
And that's because our customers have asked us for these. We don't dream up things in a vacuum. 90% of what we do is actual customer requests.
Yeah, great discussion. I think that gives our audience a clear view on how the cloudification journey will progress, right? So it will be in steps. Obviously, it won't be a marathon. It won't be a sprint. It will be a marathon rather. So we'll have to see how it evolves. But there are obviously a lot of benefits on the table out here for everyone. So maybe switching gears again to we have been touching upon this topic a lot, and it was the hottest topic at MWC. We were discussing with different companies, which was private networks, right? So maybe I can ask Mr. Jakbir saying, where do you see the biggest opportunity for private networks in India? And is Indian enterprises, businesses, or even government entities ready to deploy a private network? And will it be more of a hybrid? Randeep alluded to, it could be on-prem or it could be in cloud as well, like a public cloud. So where do you see how it will evolve? Can you give some color?
Okay. So I think let me take 3 points. One is how to deploy. Second is what the benefit, and third is whether it's going to be in cloud or not. So if you ask me that private network, I think first thing is we are talking about the all the big enterprises or the factories or the government organization, etc. Those are the right organization or the enterprises where we can talk about the private networks. Now, private networks, as we know, even the 5G is new technology for operator like us to learn and deploy and make it sure that it works. So yes, one pitch is coming from the industry, and especially for, I can say that with all due respect from the vendor partners, that is like a selling pitch. But if you really want to deploy anything for enterprise, like suppose I go to any big enterprise today and say that you deploy 5G, do you think they have the organization to deploy? They understand it? They understand the core network. They understand the radio. Do they understand the software? They understand how to operate. Do they understand what are the security challenges? At least the operator like us, we understand everything, how to make these networks up and running.
Yeah.
And that too, we take big help from these vendor partners. They always become a sort of the one edge up in terms of the technology skills, etc., to support us as and when we need the support. Do you think the enterprises are actually having that organization even to talk to the vendor partner? Forget it. I don't think that is the right, like a right time at least to begin with. So deploying private network with help or the public using the public network is the right solution to my mind. Since 5G is going to give the, like sort of the flexibility of the network slicing, we can actually slice the network for as many customers as we want. And that actually gives a benefit to the enterprise that they can have almost like their own customized network.
Yeah.
That spectrum can be given to us. We can actually share that spectrum. We can dedicate that spectrum for the requirement of the enterprise, but using the public network. Number one. Number two, we have the skill set. We have the know-how. Number three, we know how to run the security aspect so the network is not actually taken to ransom by somebody. Otherwise, very difficult. Even managing LAN-WAN network by the enterprise itself is difficult today. And we operate day and night with the enterprise customers. So we know that what they need, what kind of skills they have. So in order to ensure that kind of security and that kind of flexibility and complementing the skill set and meeting their expectation, I think we are the best people to deliver the private-like network to meeting their use cases. So that's my one point. Second point is, I think public network with a great difficulty we learn and we keep learning daily basis even today. How do we provide the scalability and the reliability of the network? We add so much reliability, especially in the transport and the core network, to ensure this network is never down. Do you think any private, enterprise can afford to have that kind of reliability built in only for himself or herself? Very difficult. Theoretically, anybody can do it, but it takes a lot of money. So having that kind of reliability and scalability and the flexibility in that network, I think if you keep deploying every factory, every government organization, separate network, it's like a duplication, triplication, or multiplication of the infrastructure which is not required. That's the another point which I actually want to put it. The last point is actually putting in the cloud. Yes, as we are putting our networks in the cloud, we can always put this network in the cloud for the benefit of the customer, and we can have the multiple level of the cloud choices available. We can have private, we can have hybrid, we can have hyperscalers, whichever like customer needs. We can actually put the workloads and the VNFs into that cloud at the choice of the customer, and we can run the network. So I think these are the 3-4, skill set, reliability, flexibility, taking benefit of the scales of the public network, ensuring the security. All these are the things which are very complex, easy to say that can be deployed, but it's very difficult to really do it practically. And plus, it will bring the sort of the synergy in the spectrum. Why to waste the spectrum only for a few customers?
Yeah.
So this is a national resource which can be used in much better way by the telcos. And I think with this, I would say that, yes, we should go, but at the same time, for these private networks, there should be a framework policy. What will be like the PLMN kind of codes available, what kind of security policies will be available, what kind of regulatory framework will be there, and what kind of the spectrum allocation will be there for the telcos to use for the private enterprises. So I think this is the framework which still need to be put in place for the private network. Can be done. The best, people to do it is the telecom operators.
Got it. Thank you very much. Good points. Maybe I can jump to Hannes. And Hannes, from Ericsson's point of view, and since you cover globally, so maybe you have some more examples to share that there are some companies which want to run their network independently as well, right? So how do you see those playing out in terms of ROI and how Ericsson is helping them as well?
For sure, we have various countries that have gone down the path of dedicating spectrum for industries. We have Germany, we have Japan as as two examples. I would say so far that the uptake there has been maybe rather moderate. We have cases, of course, where we are building, for example, networks to cover production plants that are showing promising effects, right? But then I think it's important to note, though, that the needs of these enterprises goes well beyond the local factory or mine or whatever facility we are covering. So I think it's important to look at this from an enterprise perspective, also at the broader context of network connectivity. And there, I think there is that trade-off, right? I mean, the more you fragment the spectrum into different chunks, the harder it is going to be to build the foundation of a very powerful, wide area, nationwide 5G network.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very important consideration. And I mean, nations are seeing across the world 5G is a part of a critical infrastructure, and it's so critical for the country's competitiveness. And the roots of that and the foundation of that is really in the macro network. So I think there are different trade-offs being made here by different countries, but for sure for India, where I know there is also a bit of a history of fragmented spectrum in the various parts of the bands, I think providing that clarity and sound basis to build that powerful 5G network, I think should be a key priority. Then I'd also like to say that when it comes to private networks, I mean, if you have a well-built 5G network, there are a lot of capabilities available also to emulate a private network through the macro network, right? So we have these end-to-end slicing capabilities, which I believe are providing a more sound or a more solid ROI basis, because you're basically leveraging the business case of the macro network in providing that dedicated capability. So I think there are different considerations, but I do think that not fragmenting the spectrum is really the key consideration here. Then I think, of course, we have capabilities to build. Ericsson also has great capabilities to build dedicated network on-prem. And here I agree that the ease of use and the ease of deployment is really key considerations there. And that's a lot of our focus goes into that, making that easy for the enterprises who choose to go down that path in the end.
Great points. And it echoes what Jakbir was trying to say. Thank you very much. Mr. Randeep, what do you see, especially for Airtel, since you have a great Airtel business arm as well? How do you work together with Airtel business as well? Because they have great enterprise clients. Do you see it being a low-hanging fruit to get it 5G-fied, basically?
No, I think yes, we have a great enterprise business, and we have a relationship with almost all top enterprises of the country. And I believe that automation is the need of the hour. I mean, everybody's doing some automation project, but I would say fast tracking your automation projects, whichever industry they are, manufacturing, education, logistics, FMCG, it is very, very important. Now, more and more, as we also see looking at the geopolitical situations around us, that being self-dependent, which is Atmanirbhar India, the industries of India will have to compete with the best in the world. so that they can compete on efficiency, they can compete on product quality, things like that. And that all comes through automation. In this automation wheel, I would say 5G is one spoke, cloud is another spoke, IoT is another spoke, analytics another spoke, SI is another spoke. So there are many things which we must come together to give that. But when it comes to wireless IoT, I think nothing beats 5G because of the inherent way it has been built compared to the previous wireless technologies, that it will provide that edge. And I believe combining and creating use cases and creating small use cases, but they could be around efficiency, they could be around safety. Safety is very important, or they could be around new products, which this can help you develop. It will really open up our enterprises for better, I would say, efficiency and compete with best in the world, and also create a lot of things which we today import in India. So we will partner with our enterprises on that. Now, when it comes to 5G, do they use a public 5G network or they put a private 5G network? Depends upon the use case. If the critical data is being shared on the access or 5G network, it is advisable better it is on-prem and it is on their own, you can say it could be on a private cloud, or it could be on a custom built cloud, or it could be on a public cloud. But again, depends upon what kind of data you're securing. Yes, I completely agree. There is no merit at all in allocating a separate spectrum for it because it will be wasteful. We anyhow in India have small spectrum. No point allocating a tranche of it for a use case which we don't know. But telcos can always lean in and provide those networks. It's a complex proposition. Telcos will have to play a role. The ecosystem players will have to play a role, like Ericsson, Nokia, and I would say the great SIs of India, the great IT of India, which also will find that within the country they can produce use cases using all this, and then maybe we can export these use cases around. So I really feel that 5G for enterprise is definitely an opportunity. I will not call it low hanging, because it is bespoke. It is not off-shelf. Every use case is bespoke. It is not off-shelf. So we'll have to do, you can say, we have to work with these partners to create them. We are already having many such discussions underway, where we can easily see that enterprises are seeing significant gains in their efficiency journey. So I would say that this will be a very important part. And to say the least, that this, if works well, India could be an exporter of 5G use cases, especially in enterprise domain, because they will be custom built by the system we have in India, and we will have real business case and real benchmarks of the efficiencies we'll be able to get. So yes, I see it as a big possibility of contributing to nation building.
Great. Mr. Tarun, do you want to add something to all the excellent point made?
No, I think already covered very well by Jagbir and Deep, and then Hans mentioned about that how this is being done globally. So maybe 2 or 3 things still. This is very clear that the best way is that spectrum is not misutilized or being wasted by having the allocation in a fragmented manner. So I think there I agree with Jagbir and Deep that how it can be done jointly, and there are 2 or 3 players in this. One, of course, we have to find the use cases. Then there's a support required from us as a vendor, that how we implement that solution along with CSP. And third, system integrator, a very, very important aspect. It is not only important in finding use cases, but their ecosystem and low-cost environment can help us even for maintenance of these systems. Jagbir mentioned in the beginning that it is not possible by the private wireless customers or maybe for those segments, industries, to do anything on their own, be it you talk about ports, manufacturing setup. They need technical support, and they need also a consistent support over a period of years, which the networks can be maintained. I think there I would say the system integrator environment will be very, very helpful. And if we put that together, and if we then try to see that how these applications can come to different private wireless networks with the help of CSPs. For example, we said manufacturing, and we said that there are going to be some campuses, wide area networks. There are going to be a lot of manufacturing activity, which is going to be very, very important. And then there can be some on AR, VR environment. And also in the maintenance, we see the case of Lufthansa, right? They are talking about how it can be done on air maintenance when it goes for lesser latency. So I would say, yes, there are many, many use cases which can be even exported from India. It requires a well well-oiled machinery between the CSP, the vendors, and the system integrator. And if we can do it well, I think the scope with reference to even IoT, we were trying to do together a lot of IoT in 4G, but it couldn't work properly. But the way 5G inherently works on IoT being as a main massive machine communication and ultra low latency, I would say yes, it might not be low hanging fruit as Randeep mentioned, but if we are able to make it a success, then there are going to be many use cases which can actually then help in making a lot of good things for the economy of India, and they can actually become the pillars for I think even the growth with reference to 5G use cases. As we know, we have scale in India. It is only that how we make it success in the beginning and then convert into massification. So completely agree with you, Randeep and Jagbir, on this, that let's work together and let's use the system integrators to find more options and more use cases with reference to 5G.
Great discussion.
Yes, Amir. So how do you see AWS role in private networks, and where do you see the most opportunities would be for countries like India?
So let me take the first one. We're unlocking growth by building private 5G networks on AWS and helping deploy that AWS MEC, the multi-access edge computing capabilities, to build private network solutions on. So one of the things to understand is when you're deploying a private network, connectivity obviously is important, but you're deploying the private network to enable a use case. And we believe that a lot of those use cases, like factory monitoring or public safety applications, already reside on AWS because of the amount of partners and ISV solutions we have running today. So what are our telcos doing to help build their private network business? First of all, they're building on AWS, on our MEC capabilities that we talked about, the Outpost, Wavelength. We have other edge devices called the Snow family, and so on. And what they can do now is what used to take months to go deploy a private network, you can actually do it in days today. So they're building cloud native private networks to reduce CapEx and rapidly deploy new services. They're adapting quickly to varying network usage conditions, right? So recently, Telenor publicly announced a strategic partnership to deploy their private 5G networks on AWS Snow devices. Deutsche Telekom announced a data privacy and sovereignty announcement with AWS. We've also created with our Middle East carrier, ETTelecom, a strategic relationship where ETTelecom will create a catalog of prepackaged 5G digital solutions. Their customers will be able to source a combination of AWS-based services and ETTelecom's connectivity and integration capabilities as a packaged value proposition. So again, it's back to how quickly can you deploy these applications? How quickly can you change these applications? How elastic can you make them? The second part of your question was India. We're extremely interested in partnering with most of the India operators, both wired and wireline, to enable these private network use cases, because we see an opportunity to really build around industrial zones in major metros, and to serve with high quality connectivity, and to partner with the telcos to bring that AWS edge to those industrial zones, to those enterprises in India today. So we are in talks with many of the Indian operators, and please stay tuned. We will be making hopefully some announcements in the next 12 to 24 months.
So you see industrial as a hot use case for private networks as a low-hanging opportunity?
So manufacturing and industrial vertical is one of many verticals, and it is a very high target-rich environment for private networks. But I get asked this by my telco customers all of the time. What is the vertical that you see ramping the fastest for private networks? And I think that's the wrong question to ask, if I may. I always push back and I say, the question is, what is the platform that enables you to deploy any use case, anytime, with the most flexibility and the least cost? Because we're not in the business of predicting the future. We're in the business of providing flexibility so that you, my telco customer, can react immediately to where you see the growth start to sprout.
Yeah, very well said. Completely agree. Turning the tables around, and I think, because if you see, as Randeep said, there's a lot of customization needed, and it take the easier use cases where you can showcase value and ROI, and building that template which can be replicated to multiple verticals, right? So, or a platform, as you say, which can help enable that. The time to market is very important for these players, right? Because that is what enterprises are all about, right? So completely agree on your point. Maybe shifting gears, also you guys have AWS IoT, which already deeply integrated into the enterprise, and that can also have a great synergies with the overall things which you're doing in private networks, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's expand the definition of private networks, right?
Yeah.
The IoT world has been running private networks for years.
Yeah.
They were just called Wi-Fi or Zigbee or LoRa or Sigfox or any of the other standards that are out there. So I completely agree with you, Neil. The IoT world has shown how to deploy private networks for machine-to-machine applications. What we're seeing now is just an expansion of that into the public domain and into larger enterprises and globally.
Correct. It's giving more control to the enterprises in terms of the connectivity management, as well as the SLAs, basically, which 5G promises, right? The 5 nines or 4 nines, depending on the slicing or whatever technique an operator uses, right, to promise that. And obviously in zones where there is no fiber, especially industrial remote areas, I think that it provides the best opportunity, right, in terms of connectivity.
We're absolutely seeing that, where fixed wireless access is becoming a very important access methodology for those remote areas. But again, I want us to get back to the point where the edge is wherever the device is or the person is, right? And also, we want to be access agnostic.
Yeah. So maybe we're coming to end of this. So maybe as the tradition goes, when I'm on the panel, I go for a rapid fire question. So maybe I'll ask, maybe Hannes, you can start. What would be the one killer use case you see for India for 5G? It could be a capability or a use case application. Just one, like one word answer. Manufacturing. Okay. Jagbir Singh, Mr. Jagbir Singh.
I want to say something else. So not your rapid fire, but I think one of the challenge we discussed about the ORAN and the vRAN is system integration. Today, what's the difference in the classic RAN and the ORAN and vRAN? You go for the ORAN virtual RAN, actually, there are many moving parts. You go for COT hardware to one vendor, you go software to another vendor, software radio with one vendor, DU or CU, another vendor. Then you go for the system integration, interworking, another vendor, automation, another vendor. I think that's a big issue actually in this case, unless you are a single SPOC who takes ownership. Making the ORAN and vRAN actually is, I would say, quite far.
Got it. System integration of and merging of ORAN, vRAN. Let's see. Good point. Andy?
My view will be it will be a mobile broadband, because Indian 4G speeds are not comparing with what wireless speeds Indians should get. So they want to consume a lot of data. They want to watch matches on the go. So I would go with mobile broadband.
And Tarun?
Yeah, I mean, I sorry for that, but I just mentioned about 3 steps. First step is mobile broadband along with FWA, which becomes important if we talk about slicing. And then I think I will go with Hans that manufacturing can be a very big one, but it might take a couple of years before we are able to give very good solutions for manufacturing with the help of our CSPs.
Yes, Amir.
It's the cloud native capability and the fundamental architecture change into microservices that enables you to react to any use case, as opposed to trying to predict the use case. Because to go back to that, I'm not a soothsayer. I can't predict the future. But what I do know is that the cloud will be more important, and the cloud native components of 5G are what's going to make that happen.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Great discussion and great points. I think audience might have really liked what they have heard and have enlightened themselves about of all this. Thank you very much. Until next time.
Thank you.
Stay safe. And bye-bye.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you everyone for such a detailed and informative discussion. Let's see what is there in the next session. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen.